Honey, why don't you get on board with my vision?
Why don't you get on board with my vision?
Does this sound familiar? So, getting your spouse on board with a vision, a long-term vision, sometimes can be challenging, right, honey?
Just a little.
I don't know. Have we had that much of a challenge? Maybe a little, every once in a while. But
I think at the beginning it was hard for me to dream big.
yeah. And we've definitely been hearing more and more about that as how couples getting stuck on vision, and it actually becomes there's conflict in just discussing and creating a long-term vision. And so we thought let's do an episode on this because it seems like it's a thing.
Yeah,
Right?
and interesting enough, it might not look like what you think it does.
Yeah, so we'll kind of go over what's worked for us. And a lot of times why we get stuck on creating and agreeing on a vision is because you're not talking about vision. And so, spoiler alert, a lot of times we get too specific on our vision, and then that's where things get bogged down because couples, we found, and I guess us too, start disagreeing about the details in the vision, and you never get to really establish a vision.
No, I think that's true because a lot of times I'm thinking, well, we could never do that because I don't have the plan and I don't know how to make it come together and all the goals that it's going to take in the implementation.
That's a mouthful, right?
Yes.
So we're going to go over what really is a vision because I think that's where people get stuck. And then how do you go from there? Because like I said, we tend to get stuck in the details, mired in the details, and that's what prevents a couples from really establishing a vision because vision should be a little bit more broad than I think what most couples try to do.
Yeah, I think we try to take too much at one time, take a big, huge bite.
Yeah. So if this sounds familiar, if this sounds very personal, like, yeah, that's us, then this is the episode for you to listen to. So stay tuned and we'll get into it. Welcome to the Power Up Your Marriage and Business podcast. We're your hosts, Robert and Kaylee Fukui. I know we're supposed to say we created this podcast for you, but we really created this for us. Because one of the power struggles we witnessed growing up and now dealing with in the present is balancing the needs of the business with priorities of marriage. Does this sound familiar?
As children of entrepreneurs, we're often on the receiving end of that struggle. Parents worked so hard to provide that they did not have time for us. We realized it wasn't their fault. They did only what they knew. But not wanting to repeat the past, we've been intentional about building a business that we run as opposed to it running us.
Every day we fight to keep the priorities the priority: faith, family, and finance, or the business. Some think it's impossible, but we say it's possible. You just need to challenge the false belief that a successful business only comes at the sacrifice of your family. It doesn't have to happen that way, and we know we're not the only couple to think this way and achieve it.
If you listen to some of our past episodes and tune in for future ones, you will hear from some amazing marriage experts and entrepreneur couples that have been able to build a thriving marriage and prosperous business at the same time.
So that's why we created this podcast, to be in the front row and hear from others that have gone before us. And from time to time, we'll share what has worked for us as well. But we know there's more to learn and want to take you along for the ride with us. We may never get it perfect, but with intention, we can all build a thriving marriage and prosperous business. So thank you for listening. Sit back, get comfortable, and let's power up your marriage and business. All right, let's see if we can get this done, honey.
Yeah, now that I've got you on board with my vision.
Yeah, let's see if we can get on board with my vision there, honey. So why do we get stuck? Let's start with that. So we'll kind of start with, why do couples get stuck on establishing vision or discussing and creating a vision? And then really, what is a vision versus what's a goal, right? And then versus what's a plan. And so we'll get to that. But first, let's talk about, honey, why do we get stuck?
Because you cannot get into my mind and see what I'm talking about.
Well, yeah, that's a given. But in general, one is usually a dreamer versus one's a doer. So one person is a little bit more analytical and wants to figure out the details, where the other one just loves ideation and free flow thought, right?
Yeah, I have so many ideas for you, honey, that it is crazy.
Yep.
And they just keep coming every day, more and more, for you to implement.
Yep, exactly. And so what happens is when one is the dreamer and just starts throwing out all kinds of ideas,
And they're all good ones, honey.
the doer gets overwhelmed. Right? Right?
Is that what happens to you?
well, think about, honey, if you will be honest with yourself, that sometimes the roles are reversed.
Yes, they are.
When I come in with ideas and you get mired in the details of trying to figure it out, and then we get stuck.
Yes, that's true. That has happened.
So it goes both ways. And so just know that, right? It goes both ways. So are you nodding your head? Yeah, one's a dreamer, one's a doer. One can get overwhelmed. The other one wants to just talk and just dream and vision and ideate and all that. And so you got to understand, number one, is you're just different. And a lot of times when the dreamer doesn't get the kind of response and enthusiasm from their partner, that they get discouraged and they get frustrated. And the doer, spouse, gets overwhelmed by the dreamer's just vision and just throwing up all kinds of ideas.
Yeah, and then you get started on a project, and then I've got a million more coming up, and you're like, honey, you got to finish something here. You can't just keep throwing these things out here at me and then want me to do it, and then you're on to the next one.
Mm-hmm. So I guess the first place to start about how to start, getting into that ideation phase of dreaming and vision is, number one, you both have to, number one, come to agreement what vision is, what this vision is, or what vision is versus, when to vision, when to dream versus when to get into the details, I guess. And when you're in ideation mode, one is probably need to set aside time and space to do that, because I think if you kind of come in on your spouse in the room and you start ideating, when especially the doer spouse is in the middle of projects and doing some details, maybe do some administrative work or whatever, that they can get very overwhelmed. And so you definitely want to set aside specific time to ideate, right?
Well, I think too, yeah, I agree with you. If you are the dreamer, it's good to write some of this stuff down, because as myself, I get so many ideas, and there's going to be 100 more the next day, as I was saying earlier, just to write them down. Mm-hmm. I don't have to share every one with you right at that moment, right?
Yep. Because dreamers tend to just ideate at a whim. They'll just come in and start talking. Versus
why are you looking at
the
me?
doer, right? The taskmaster is usually wants to stay focused on the task at hand, and coming in and bombarding with all kinds of stuff is just very interruptive.
And I learned that early on, that if I want you to be done working at a certain time, then I need to not be interrupting you all the time. And I can write stuff down. I can talk with you later. Otherwise, you're not going to get all your work done. Yep. And then you're going to get into my time, our family time. So I try and not do that.
Yeah. So when it comes to dreaming and ideating, definitely, I think you need to just carve out space for that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's better. And then when you get into that, on the dinner table or whatever, talking about dreams and vision, one is understand what vision is versus goals. So visions are definitely more general than goals are. So, for example, if you want to, something very specific goals is like, I want to live in Charlotte, North Carolina, or I want to live in Barcelona, Spain, or I want to live in, specific areas. And versus vision would be, I want to live by the water, or I want to live in the woods, or have a cabin.
Right? Live in the mountains, yes.
And that can be you can be almost anywhere. Well, anywhere there's water or anywhere there's mountains, right? But it's more general. It's not tied to a specific location. And so vision is general enough that you can see it, but it's not so specific that there's only one or two paths to get there, right? So that, for example, we want to live by the water. We were both agreement on wanting to live by the water, and then we also both agree we probably don't want to live by the beach for a number of reasons. Either hurricanes or just really tough in a house, and just the repairs and maintenance that needs you need to have when you're living by the beach. Versus at the lake, you don't have as much of those environmental issues to deal with, and you don't deal with too much weather issues either, right? You're not going to face like tidal waves or tsunamis or things like that.
Hurricanes.
And the lake, obviously, it's more peaceful. You can get on the water in your boat, and you don't have to deal with waves, that kind of stuff, right? So we kind of went from, again, one lived by the water, and we both kind of crossed out living by the beach, but now the lake. So the lake now, that still opens up a lot of possibilities.
Oh my gosh, there's so many.
Yeah. And so, again, vision is general enough where you can see it, because we can see a lake, but then it also allows for different paths to achieve them, right? So I think from the doer, the analytical, how are we going to get this done? At least for me, it kind of takes a little bit of pressure off of trying to figure out the specific area we're going to live. And what happens is it allows you, again, this is long term, so we know we're not going to move, anytime soon, or not next week or so.
Not tomorrow.
But it also allows us to check out what lake we do want to live in. And maybe we can start incorporating some of that long-term vision into the present by taking vacations or weekenders, find an Airbnb or a cabin on a lake.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And we have done some of that.
Yeah.
And working in locations where you're close by, maybe a lake where you can go visit it or stay at a couple nights.
Yeah, in fact, when we first found Lake Norman right outside of Charlotte, was because we were there for an event, shared this Airbnb with another couple, and we just like, wow, this is a great lake.
Yeah, your client was the NASCAR driver.
Yeah, and so
was having a race, and so we went and we stayed there.
Yeah, so and I was like, oh, I never heard of this place, right? And so we're like, and I'm looking on Zillow, and I'm like, how much do homes go for around here? And we're realizing, hey, we can actually afford a place here on the lake. And so then during our book tour last year, we, Tandem, the Married Entrepreneur's Guide for Greater Work-Life Balance. That
yes.
You can pick up on our website. Go to thetandembook.com. But when we were on our book tour, right, we stopped in Charlotte and found an Airbnb on Lake Norman.
Yeah, you surprised me. I loved it. It was great.
Yeah, to spend a few days and check it out some more. And so that's an example of, we started with a broad vision, and then we're like, hey, let's check things out,
mm-hmm.
right? And then we're like, oh, this is actually pretty cool. And that's how we came to agreement more on specific location. So I think what happens is when we get too specific, in this example, if we were to start throwing out examples of locations, then we could have got bogged down because, I don't want to live there. I didn't hear any good things about that or whatever.
Yeah, it's too easy to poo-poo things.
Mm-hmm.
And just find like all the reasons why you can't do it, as opposed to with the vision, it's a little bit slower process. You can think about it. You can go exploring. You can check things out. It doesn't put as much pressure on the relationship too, I think.
Mm-hmm. And it makes it more fun to kind of start to flesh out the vision, right? Well, let's go check out the lake. Because the other part too, I remember we talked about, I want to live, by the water, maybe in the summertime or spring, fall, whatever. But in the winter, I remember I was talking about maybe buying a condo somewhere in the Rockies, or maybe, within Colorado or maybe New Mexico or whatever. But finding a cabin or a condo that we can purchase there, and we'd kind of live split 50-50, right, during the year. And then now that got a little specific about condo and cabin, but we're talking about having like a ski location, a location when we wanted to ski and have a place. And then you had brought up the idea later on, not in the same conversation, about, well, why buy a place? Why not just rent a place?
Yeah, because I thought we don't have all the overhead. We could go skiing anywhere then. We're not like tied into the one place. And I thought we just had more freedom.
Yeah, because I figured by that point, obviously we have just a retirement income, whatever you want to call it, but we'd have that kind of cash flow to say, let's, instead of having money tied up into one asset, that we can just go ahead and spend, because we weren't going to, in the wintertime, we weren't going to stay like 6 months there anyway. It was going to be, and winter's not that long anyway, but it'd be maybe a month, right? And so yeah, let's just rent a place for a month, and yeah, we can stay in Breckenridge or we can go to Park City or whatever. We just every year we just kind of rotate different ski locations, and yeah, that made sense.
And it's not as expensive because as having a whole home or resort or whatever
Hmm.
timeshare thing, you just go for a month.
So that's just another example of how the vision kind of evolved. Didn't get tied into specifics, but the core thing that we agreed upon that stayed true in the vision was waterfront and ski town. Right? The general vision stayed the same, which is we want to live by the water, but we also want to be able to spend a lot of time, in the mountains when we ski during ski season. So then we start getting more specific, right? As the visions evolved and as we started to say, oh, Lake Norman's nice, now we started looking into things. How much our homes cost and what would we do as we, if, and it's still not cast in stone, but if we were to live in Lake Norman, what were the steps to do to get there?
You
And
start
so,
researching, checking into
mhm,
it, exploring things.
yeah, so we said, well, maybe, in a couple of years, we could go rent a place for a year in Lake Norman, right? Check out the location. Do we really like it? And then if we like it, then we start looking for a place to buy. And when we find a place to buy, then we can sell our place here,
Yeah.
right? So again, baby steps and steps towards and little goals and a plan to get to that vision of living on the water.
Well, and that helps me because it's not so overwhelming. Like, oh my gosh, we're going to sell our place tomorrow and we're going to move to Lake Norman or whatever, and we're just going to pack up and go.
Yeah. And I love the idea about renting a place first for a number of reasons, is because again, it's not so, like here we go and we're packing up and we're moving and it's so like definite and so final. But it allows us to number one, check out the area. Do we really like it? Because we've also heard friends and family that have moved places and now they're moving again because they don't like it.
Yeah, we've heard a lot of that lately.
And so the renting is allows you to check it out first and not go all in and have a place to come back to if it doesn't work out,
Yeah.
right? Because especially California, right? Once you sell a place and leave out of California, it's really hard to come back in because you're going to get priced out pretty quickly, right? Because there's very few places in the country where the home values, increase as fast and as high as here in Southern California and northern in even parts of Northern California, right? So that allows us to have some options, and then again we get to know the place, we like it. Now let's purchase, and then we'll sell our place.
Yeah, find out what area. I mean, that lake is huge. I know people that, like you were saying earlier, they've moved, they've loved it there, and then they give it like year two, and they're like, oh no, we want to move again. And so we are trying to not have to do that because we don't want to keep moving.
Yeah,
I know you like to settle in someplace and then just stay there. So,
yeah, yeah. And so yeah, this gives you a good trial. So this is a great example of vision was broad, want to live by the water. Yes, let's do some, take a month during ski season and find a place in the mountains for a month or so. And then we start creating some goals like, hey, maybe next 2 to 3 years, let's check this out, right? And then now the plan is, okay, what are we going to do? And how do we do it where it's not overwhelming, right? So one is rent a place first and then check it out and then decide, right? So vision, some goals, and then a plan.
and then too, I want to say sometimes, when you're at the beginning stages, it can be like a little bit stressful, but you think about it, you come back, you talk about it some more, and it kind of evolves. Like us moving to the lake, that didn't happen in a 5 minute period. One time sitting down and talking, and we still talk about it, and things are still evolving and changing, and that's kind of the fun of it. There's
Yeah.
nothing set in stone.
Yeah, that's a key piece too, is don't get so stuck on it, right? And don't feel like, okay, we talked about it now, this is set in stone, but allow it to evolve, right? And the vision really hasn't changed, right? The specific details have changed, but the vision has stayed the same. So that's where the point of agreement of what the vision, what does it look like? as far as where you're going to live, or the kind a type a location type that you would live, not specific, but the type of place you would live in, and what you would be doing for work, or how you're going to scale back a little bit, and how you want to enjoy your time out there. How do you want to maybe do some volunteer work, and think about what that would look like. It doesn't have to be specific as far as types of organizations or anything like that. The one kind of specific thing I had in my vision, which I guess is more a plan, I guess, but in my quote unquote retirement years, when I'm not working as much, because my wife will not let me retire the way everybody else retires, right?
No, you're not.
But she has allowed me to not work as much. So thank you, honey. but part of that, kind of in those retirement years, I want to be a golf marshal in the summer. And I thought at first be a ski patrol in the winter, because I wanted to be able to ski and golf for free. Basically, is what it was, right? I don't want to use my hard-earned retirement money for green fees and lift tickets. But even that's evolved, because when we went to Park City this winter, and well, before we even got to Park City, I remember I told you, said, yeah, I don't think I want to do ski patrol.
Because you're saying it's so dangerous.
Not so much that, but it's hard work. It's not as easy and glamorous as it looks. It's hard work. You're backcountry, which is great for a lot of people, but you're working, and you're shoveling, and you're planting, stakes in the ground and markers, and there's a lot of stuff.
Making sure the mountain's stable and sturdy, and it's not going to come down.
Yeah, so I didn't want to have to work that hard, and so I said, well, maybe ski instructor. And so that first day, I think at Park City, we're getting our gear. And a ski instructor's walking down, and I think you started talking to him.
Yeah, started talking
and
to
next
him,
thing
made friends with him.
Yeah, he said, oh yeah, my husband's thinking of being a ski instructor when he gets in retirement. So the guy gives me his card, right? He's like, oh, we're always looking for ski instructors. Oh, okay. So I have this guy's card, Don. And then
I think you still have it.
I do. It's sitting, it might be right here on the desk, or it might be in the closet. But then on the first or second day, we're starting to talk at the top of the mountain, next to the trail map, or not the trail map, but it's a big board right at the top of the mountain, and there's the trails, and there's a guy there or two
at the information map.
Yeah, that would just tell people
how to get down, what mountains are open, and where's a good
not
ski
what mountain. The mountain's open. It's what
well, no,
runs.
It lifts, runs. Okay.
And it wasn't so much that, but it's how to get to a certain part of the mountain. It wasn't just that. It was how to get to.
Yeah, because some of them were not easy to get to.
Yeah, the trail map was not only was it not to scale, but it was very tricky. It wasn't. And so, anyways, we would talk to the I guess you call them information, or I think they call them concierge, mountain concierge. And so we got talking to one of them, and he's like, yeah, we're basically like the Walmart greeters of the mountain. And I'm like, huh. And he's like, yeah, two days, I think 2 days a week is what you have to commit to, and then you get your pass, your season pass.
Ticket.
And I'm like, oh, now that might be the thing I might want to do. That's even easier than being a ski instructor. So anyways, that's how that even that part's evolved as well. So yeah, in probably about 15 or so years, you might find me in Park City or some mountain, giving directions of how to get down to the bottom and find the right lift. Anyway, so again, another example of how things have evolved, and just don't get stuck into one thing. And if you're still stuck on long-term vision, then maybe start with some smaller vision, like more like in the next 2 to 5 years, what do you see yourself doing? And because we always have at least some more immediate things we want to accomplish, whether it's maybe move an office location, or maybe taking on, additional products or services, or maybe doing more vacations, or at least taking a little bit more time off. Maybe not big old vacations, but at least taking more time off. Things like that.
Maybe it's hiring someone. It could be a virtual assistant. It could be like getting some help. Different areas.
Yeah, so there's some things.
Maybe getting someone to come clean your house.
Yeah, so there's some things, more immediate desires that you might have for business or home, your marriage, that you've talked about, but maybe let's start talking about it more and maybe create some goals and a plan to get that, to achieve those things, right? Because again, it also comes to what did the two of you agree on,
Mm-hmm.
and start with agreement. Not don't get too mired in the details of what you disagree on, but first start with agreement. So yeah, I need more help, or man, it'd be good to take more time off. Okay, what does that look like?
Just dream about it. You're not making any decisions. You're not doing anything. You're just talking about it, brainstorming,
Yeah,
seeing all the different possibilities of what, yeah, like you said, that could look like.
yeah. And really, what you're doing is you're almost kind of back ending into vision, because you want to have more free time from work. You want more help from work. You want to be able to do things outside of work, right? And so, really, your long term vision is probably just going to be a bigger, well, vision of what you're trying to accomplish in the short term.
Yeah, it could be like, oh, we want to go on vacation. What would Hawaii look like if we went to Hawaii? What would we be doing there? I can see myself laying at the pool. Oh, honey, I've always wanted to take surfing lessons. And, drinking the Mai Tai, going hiking, swimming in waterfalls. Just brainstorm what that one thing, that one trip could look like. And then have your spouse brainstorm as well and give you what input that maybe he or she might want to do while you were there.
Yeah,
Just
in
for
fact,
fun.
I remember with one of our clients recently, they were stuck on vision as well, but there was one aspect of, she wanted to have a cabin in the woods kind of thing. And then so I said, okay, what are some in the short term? What are some things you can do to kind of live that out? Which
Mm-hmm.
is, why don't you start checking out when you do a weekender? Go check out, rent it, find an Airbnb or some house or cabin in the woods that you can stay at for a weekend or a week or whatever, and try different locations.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And the spouse was totally open to that. They're like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I would totally love to do that.
Yeah.
That
So
would be
now,
fun.
now you're bringing the long-term vision kind of more into the present by just testing things out, right? And on the back end, like, again, like I said earlier, is if you do get stuck in that long-term vision, let's look at some short-term things that you've desired to do, and then hey, let's start doing it, right? And just create a plan of action to be able to achieve those things. And how do we pull together to make these things happen, right? Because at the end of the day, that's what you're trying to do. Even with the long-term vision, is how do we get together and work towards that?
And they don't have to, with your spouse, they don't have to look the same and be exact. You can like add the two different ideas in to kind of intermingle and it comes out even better.
Yeah, and the blessing of that is, even if you have two kind of extreme ideas, that's long term. Okay, that's fine. That's long term. We're not making a decision right now. So why don't we, in the present, test it out,
Yes.
right? So you might want to live in a different location than maybe your spouse does. Well, let's go check them out. One year we go to Europe, and in another year we kind of spend it in Vermont, right? And we both check it out together and see, okay, what do we really like? Because sometimes the idea sounds romantic, but when you actually do it, it might change.
Oh, that happens a lot. It's
Yeah,
easy to have this romantic idea in your mind, and then you get there and you're like, oh, this was not what I was
yeah,
envisioning at all.
yeah. And so one of you might change and more towards, like, lean more towards what your spouse's idea is, or it might just be like we've talked about. Well, we might have a home base in one location, but it doesn't mean we can't travel and spend months at a time in a different location,
Yeah, working somewhere
right?
else.
And so that's not. I mean, it's long term anyway. We're talking more in that retirement age. So, hey, we can even if we maybe don't have agreement where we want to live, but let's say, okay, let's decide on maybe what would be the best home base, and then we can still spend a few months at a time at the other location. And whether it's buying a property there, or like what we talked about, just renting a place for a summer or a winter or whatever, right?
Hmm.
So there's ways to get there, right? So don't get stuck on only one way to achieve your vision. How's that
Yeah,
sound?
there's no one way, like you were saying, or perfect way.
Yeah, exactly.
And sometimes you just have to go exploring and then you start researching or you go to that place and visit and then you're like, oh, you know what? Let's try your idea now
Yeah.
and see if that works out better because You never know till you explore and you research it.
Yeah, so
What you could find along the way. You might find something, both of you, along the way of exploring what your vision is, something completely different that you want to do instead.
Yeah, so I think the bottom line is let it evolve, right? Don't get so stuck in it. So keep the vision general enough where you can see it, right? That's what, I mean, vision is. What do you see? And you don't need to get too specific on the vision, right? Keep it general enough so it allows for many paths to get to that vision. And then as you start to agree on maybe some specific items like where, location, how much time, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, then you can start putting a plan together of how to get there, right? So again, keep it general, allow it to evolve, and then test it out. And then test out in the present, what that might look like. And then you can create a plan of action to get there.
Yeah, and keep talking about it with your spouse.
Yeah, exactly. Keep it fun. I think it gets so...
Don't be so serious about it.
Yeah, because your vision, long-term vision is supposed to be fun. I mean, this is going to be, something that you're going to enjoy, right? And so, yeah, keep it fun. And allow it to be a journey to get there. Yeah, practice that vision, that long-term vision, like we talked about before in a previous episode about practice retirement now. Some of the things you want to do later, why don't you do some of those things now? So keep it general, keep it fresh, allow it to evolve, and have fun on the journey, right?
I think we need a beach day, honey. Speaking of all this.
Okay, sounds good, honey. We'll do it on Monday. So thanks for listening, and share this. I'm sure if you've had challenges with this, and we've had it, clients have had it, other people, some of your friends and family are having it, share this episode with somebody that can benefit from this discussion, and leave a review. We'd love a review from you guys. And I guess that's it, right?
Yes, we really appreciate you guys so much. We thank you for being part of our family.
Yep. So until next week, God bless. Thank you for listening to the Power Up Your Marriage and Business podcast. If you found this episode to be valuable, please leave a rating and share it with an entrepreneur couple you know.
Yes, and remember to hit the subscribe button so that you'll get all of our latest episodes, and visit our website, Power Couples by Design, to access a variety of free resources to help your marriage and business, like our weekly videos and on-demand webinars. And don't forget to download our free 8-step guide that you can find on our homepage to help your marriage and business thrive.
We're here to help you build a thriving marriage and a prosperous business. God bless your marriage and business. See you next week.